Hey guys, in this video let's create this cute little mystical creature or a character. Alright, so to get started I'm going to go to Lightbox and let's just grab something like the Sphere 128. Okay. Alright, really cool. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this, and the one of them is going to be, the first sphere is going to be sort of like the head, and let's use the second one for the body. So I'm going to move the body down and let's just do something like this. To shape the body, initially let's just go to deformation, and then let's use the gravity to kind of shape this into something kind of that looks like a little bit like the body that I'm looking for. If I wanted to expand the bottom a little more, I can always go to move, and you know, we could do that. We can use the move, or let's just be let's do something fancy. Let's go to move and let's go into taper. And with the taper, we can just do something like this, right? We can actually expand this out, and we can decide if we like the top or if we want to control that as well. I'll just do something like this. That's pretty good. All right, I'm going to go ahead and say accept. And now I have this shape as my initial shape. Let's go into draw. I'm going to press Alt and tap on the head. And what I'm going to do is let's just actually scale this down. I'm going to make sure I'm not in my symmetry. I'm just going to scale this down, and this is going to be the inside part of the head, right? It's going to be the actual face. So I'll do something like this. And now let's create kind of the cloak top part of our design. So to do that, I'm going to jump into subtools. Let's go ahead and duplicate this and just make this just a little bit larger, right? Now I have something like this, and I can also, of course, expand it. If I wanted to, if you wanted to see through this, you can always turn on the transparency. Now you can see the inner portion of the design, right? Now, how would we turn this into more of a kind of a hollow shape, so we can actually turn this into a hoodie part? So to do this, what I could do is I'm going to select this top part, and you know what? I'm going to jump out of transparency mode. All right, so now we have two shapes. We have the outer shape and the inner shape, and let's go ahead and name these. So I'm going to actually name this head, and this is going to be my hoodie, right? So I'm going to say rename it, and let's go ahead and call it hoodie, just so I know what this is, because these look similar, right? So now the external part, I would like to do the following. I'm going to go to geometry, and let's go to zRemesher, and in here let's just dial this down to like 1, really low. Turn the adapt off and turn the symmetry on. I'm going to turn on my polyframe, and I'm just going to zRemesh this. That's going to give me something like this that I can manage a little bit better. I'm going to actually drop it half. And what I'm trying to do, I'm going to drop it again. What I'm trying to do is get into some kind of a low poly mode where I can control this with zModeler, right? So the next thing I would like to do is delete some of these faces. Let's jump into zModeler. Let's press spacebar. Let's go to Polygroup, and let's do poly loop. And let's just maybe take this front loop and just do something like this. I'm going to hover over any one of these faces, and under polygroup, let's do polygroup island, and let's just click on that. All right, very cool. Now again, I'm going to hover over face, go to delete. Let's go ahead and say polygroup island, and if I just click on it, that's going to delete all of those faces. I can also turn the double on, and now I'm starting to get something that looks a little more like the hoodie, right? Before we add thickness to this, let's go ahead and grab our move, and let's just make it kind of large. And let's just maybe turn this into something a little more shape-wise that resembles kind of the hoodie that we want, right? So we'll do something like this, and we can even maybe make this part a little more pointy. And we can decide how much of it actually goes forward. Maybe it's just kind of covering the top, something like this, right? And that feels pretty good. All right, very cool. So now since we got to this point, the next thing I would like to do is let's go ahead and add some thickness to this. How do we do that? Well, we can always go back to zModeler. Let's go to extrude, and let's just say polygroup all. And hovering over a face, I'm just going to start extruding and just give myself some sort of thickness for my hoodie. All right, so something like that works pretty well. If we want to make this back part to be a little more pointy, I can always go to Move, turn on AccuCurve. I'm just going to pull this out and just create just a little kind of a back part, just be a little pointy, just for fun, right? Adjust this a little bit better so it feels like it flows. If I want to make the top part to be a little sharper, right? I could do that. Let me grab something like the Move Topology, and let's just maybe sharpen this by pulling this up. So I'll do something like that. And you can see that that's going to create kind of a nice sharp edge. All right, next let's go ahead and add some sleeves to this, right? So to do this, I'm gonna go to Subtools. I'm gonna say Insert. Let's grab something like the cylinder. We can decide on the size. Let's also do the taper trick as well. Maybe we'll just taper the arm just a little bit, and I'm gonna say Accept. Go ahead and rotate it, and let's get it into position. If we wanted to rig this character, let's actually create this as a T-pose, right? I think that would be that would make more sense. I would like to inset this portion of the geometry, so I'm gonna go to zModeler. Holding down the Alt key, let's make a selection of all of these faces here. I'm gonna go into Inset. I'm gonna leave it on single poly, that's fine. And let's just do an inset. So we can decide on the thickness of our sleeve. So something like that I think is perfect. Let's go into QMesh. Let's do Polygroup all and just push them back. And that's gonna be kind of the inside part of the sleeve. Next, we need some kind of a cartoon hand, right? To do this, let's insert a box. And to change the topology of the box, let's go to Initialize. And let's just give ourselves something super simple. It's going to be 1 by 1 by 1. I'm going to say Q cube. I'm going to grab my move and let's just get this into position. All right, so this is going to be the starting point for our hand, right? What I'm going to do next is let's just create some fingers, and then we'll just duplicate them, and we'll go from there, right? So to do this, I'm going to go to Subtool, and I'm actually going to duplicate this box because I need one of these to be the hand, right? I'm going to make it maybe a little bit wider, and let's just do something like this. Essentially, that's going to be our hand, right? And now let's just create the fingers. So I'm going to go to this one first. Let's grab zModeler. I'm going to hover over my face, and if I go to extrude, it's going to it still says single poly. That's great. Let's just do something like this for one of the fingers, right? And if we wanted to add additional edges here, we could always bevel them, right? Let's go to bevel. Let's just do something like this, just so we can always bend our fingers, right? We can even bevel the ends, right? So that's gonna maybe look a little more like a finger. Next, I would love to bend this finger. So let's go to Move, and let's go into Settings. We'll do Bend Curve, and let's just add another point here, and let's just bend it a little bit, just so it feels, it's gonna be a little more dynamic, right? The finger is gonna be bent just a little bit. And then I'm gonna say Accept. So to make a copy, I'm gonna hold down the Control, I'm gonna drag it out and create a little bit of a spacing, and we can also bend it a little bit as well. Let's just do something like this. Let's do Control one more time and maybe bend this even more. And essentially this is gonna be kind of the hand, right? If I do Control one more time, I can even make a thumb. Maybe one of these could actually be used as a thumb. Let's get this into position and maybe make it somewhat shorter, maybe a little smaller, and just get it into position for the hand, right? Very cool. So what would be the next step? The next step would be to take all of these and merge them into this box here, right? So I'm going to take this box, and let's just maybe make it just a little bit larger. Make sure it kind of incorporates all these fingers nicely. I'm going to go to zModeler. Let's hover on an edge. Let's go to Insert, and let's do multiple edge loops. And now what we can do is we can just drag this around, and figure out how can we make this work. So let's go ahead and do something like this. We'll do 3 strips. And now what I would love to do is let's also bevel these. So we'll bevel this something like this, and just simply click to make it exactly the same size. And we can do same thing here, right? Let's do insert, and instead of multiple, let's do a single, and we'll just do something like this. All right, and now we just have to connect all of these boxes together. So to do this, I'm gonna go ahead and go to merge down. I'm gonna say okay. Now it's in one layer. Now, how do we bridge these? Let's go ahead and bridge them together. I'm gonna hover over this polygon, press spacebar. Let's go to bridge, and let's do 2 polys. I'm gonna click on one, and then click on the other to bridge them together. Let's go ahead and do that for the rest of the fingers as well. Just go around and kind of bridge all of these together. And I'm gonna do the same thing with the thumb as well. All right, and now very quickly we created something that looks like a hand. If we wanted to adjust any of these points, we can always grab our move and just move these points around. If something is overlapping, again, I can just make sure that I fix all of that. The final thing that I need is maybe let's expand the hand portion of the hand. So let's go ahead and go into solo. And to expand the hand, I'm gonna go back to zModeler, and I'm gonna do, let's do extrude. And let's just simply extrude this face, that's fine. To make this a little bit thicker, we can always go to our move and just simply move these points around. All right, I think that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and jump out of solo and take a look. If we wanted to move this around, we can get into better position. We can also adjust, of course, the scale of our hand, and let's just get it in place. Next, let's go ahead and duplicate it. I'm gonna jump out of the polyframe. Now to copy to the other side, let's grab our sleeve and we'll merge it down with the hand into one layer. Let's go ahead and mirror it across and just do a mirror and weld, right? And now it's gonna give us 2 of them, which is great. Next, let's adjust the topology of the head. So I definitely need this to be much lower poly. So for that, I'm gonna go to geometry, go to zRemesher. Let's switch this to maybe 0.5. I'm gonna jump out of adapt, turn on my X symmetry, and I'm just gonna do a zRemesh. If I turn on my polyframe, you can see what that looks like. I would like to go half, and let's just continue dialing this down until it gets to the point where it kind of makes sense. I think something like this should work. If we smooth this outside of ZBrush, this is going to be pretty much perfect, right? And then also, you can see the topology sort of matches the topology of the grid topology of the hoodie as well. What we need to do next is let's optimize the body. I'm going to press Alt and click to select this mesh. And let's do the same thing. I'm going to go to geometry. Let's go to zRemesher. Let's dial this down to like 1. I'm going to turn adapt off, turn the X symmetry on, and go ahead and do zRemesher. And now I can do half and do a little more. Let's just optimize to something like this. I think that kind of makes sense as far as the topology for the body goes. So this is really nice. How do we connect these sleeves to the body when the topology is completely different? So one thing we could do is we can select our arms, right? And we can merge them down. So I'm going to say merge down. I'm going to say okay. And now all of these are on the same layer. All right, so this is looking good. Next, let's go ahead and zRemesh our sleeves and the body of the character to have kind of a unified topology. Right now, all of these shapes are completely separate. But before we do that, let's just maybe separate our hands so we don't have to zRemesh those, because they are actually pretty much perfect. So to do this, I can do auto groups, and that's going to give me a better control. Now I can do Control Shift and click on the body. I'm going to click on it again and yet again, which means I can go to Subtools, I can go to Split, and let's do a Split Hidden. That's going to put the body on its own layer. And now we can zRemesh this. So let's go to Geometry, go to zRemesher. Let's leave this on 1. Let's say Detect Edges, that's fine. We don't really need to keep the groups because we kind of want to unify all of this together anyways. I'm going to leave the active symmetry on, and let's just see what happens if we do zRemesh. Now this is interesting. It's zRemeshing it, but it's not really merging these shapes together, right? Because these are separate shapes. So zRemesher can only zRemesh things that have been kind of unified. So to fix this, let's go ahead and do Control Z to undo. And essentially we need to unify these shapes together, right? The two sleeves and the body, in order for zRemesher to kind of turn it into one mesh. So how do we do this? There's a couple ways we could do it. One, we can turn it into a Dynamesh, right? And that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is we can go to Move, and we can go into Gear icon, and clicking on something called Remesh by Union. So before we do that, let's jump out of Active Symmetry, and let's go ahead and click on Remesh by Union. Now what that's done is it actually welded our sleeves to the body mesh, right? Which means now it's one mesh, and I can prove it by going to Auto Groups. If I click on Auto Groups, you can see that all of these three meshes are now one auto group. So let's go ahead and say accept. That's fine. Let's jump back into zRemesher. We'll say detect edges. We'll turn the active symmetry back on. I'm going to leave it on 1, and let's do a zRemesh. All right, and that's going to give us a beautiful, clean merge of the sleeves and the body, which is great. Let's do half, and let's go ahead and do zRemesh. And that's even better. Now it's exactly what I was looking for, right? At this point, let's jump out of the polyframe and take a look. And I like the resolution of the body and the head and the hoodie. I think all of that makes sense. Let's just grab our move and maybe move this top part below the head. I think that would make a little more sense. I would like the head not to be floating, so I'm gonna actually click on Alt and select the head. Let's grab the move, and let's just make sure that it's actually, you know, connected to the bottom here, and we can even maybe change the size of it just a little bit, right? And then if you can also change the scale and do all of that, any final adjustments that you wish. Maybe this hoodie here is a little bit too tall. I can always jump out of the perspective view, snap into the straight view, unlock the pivot, and let's jump out of the symmetry. Let's just bring this down here, lock this back up, and now we can just scale this down, right? Kind of change the height of this so it fits a little bit better. I think that's perfect. Go back into the perspective view and take a look. Now as the final piece, I think it would be really cool if we added some feet. So that could be as simple as just bringing in a sphere. Let's go ahead and do that. Make sure you save your subtool. Let's jump into subtool and let's do insert a sphere. Now the sphere is definitely wrong topology, right? So to match the topology of our character, let's go back to zRemesher, switch this to way down 0.5, active symmetry, no adapt, and zRemesh. And let's go ahead and dial this down. I'm gonna do half. And let's just keep dialing it down until it makes sense as far as the feet goes. I think something like this is pretty much perfect. I'm gonna go into the side view. Let me jump out of the perspective view and get this into position. And essentially these are gonna be kind of big, you know, shoes, right? So we'll do something like this. I think is great. Now we just need to eliminate the bottom part of this. Let's just do Control Shift. Let's jump into the slice curve, and let's just do a slice somewhere right here. Do Control Shift again to hide it. Let's go ahead and delete hidden. And now if I turn the double on, you can see what I'm left with. This is definitely a little too wide. So let's just do something like this. Perfect. I'm gonna jump out of symmetry, get it into position, and this is gonna be one of the legs here. To close the hole, let's go to zModeler. I'm gonna hover over an edge, say close, and we'll say close hole. And that's gonna close that up. All right, so that looks pretty good. I wouldn't mind fixing geometry on this. So let's go back to zRemesher and let's just clean this up, right? I'm gonna keep it really low again. Let's do like 0.2, something super low. Let's leave active symmetry off because this is actually off center, right? And let's just do zRemesh, see what that gives us. I think that's pretty much perfect, right? As far as what I was looking for. We can always polish this just a little bit, maybe make it even nicer. And now we have this cute little foot underneath the character. To make two of them, I'm gonna just mirror it and do, let's do mirror and weld. Now we have 2 feet. And let's jump into perspective view and take a look. Jump out of the poly frame, and you can see what that looks like. Again, make sure you save your subtool. And let's just quickly perform a merge. I'm gonna say merge visible. That's gonna give me a new tool. I can see it right here, it's called merged. If I go into it, you can see that now the whole character is just one layer. And I can also see that my entire character is about 2000 polygons, right? 2100, which is pretty cool. I can also turn on the polyframe and take a look. And I like the polygroups. I'm gonna leave all of this on because we can use that to do our UVs, right? Very cool. So let's go ahead and do the UVs. So to do the UVs, let's just go ahead and do a couple things. First, I'm going to do Control Shift and click on the body. And I'm going to go to Polygroups. And in here, let's click on something Groups by Normal. And right now it's set to 45 degrees. So I'm going to say Groups by Normal. All right, so that's nice. It's going to give us separate polygroups for the inside of the sleeve. It didn't really grab the bottom like I wanted. So I guess we could do it manually. Let's go to zModeler. Let's hold down the Alt key. And let's just make a selection of all of these faces that we want to be included, right? As a bottom UV for our texture. So I'm just gonna literally just go around and make a selection. Let's say polygroup, let's do polygroup all, and let's just simply click on the bottom piece, right? So now we just separated this into its own group, which is great. And finally, let's do the same thing maybe with the top part here as well. Hold down the Alt key, just very quickly make a selection. Hover over the face, and let's just do, again, polygroup. Let's just click, and that's gonna give us a separate group as well. Control Shift and click to bring everything back, and let's take a look. And I think everything is ready to go. The only thing I would still like to separate is the feet and maybe the back of the head. So I'm going to do Control Shift and click to isolate the head. Let's just jump out of the perspective view, hold down the Control key, and let's just select all of these faces here and do Control and W. Okay, so that grabbed some of them, not all of them. Let me actually try this again. Let me do all of these, do Control and W, and that's a little bit better. Great. Let's do Control and Shift and click to bring everything back. All right, so I think this is pretty much perfect. Next, let's go ahead and undo unwrap and see what how this is looking as far as the UVs go, right? So I'm gonna go to Z plugin. Let's go to UV master. I'm gonna leave symmetry on. Let's do, let's say polygroups, and we'll do unwrap. Let's go ahead and say flatten. We can take a look and see if we like the UVs. I think they're pretty good, but we could probably lay them out just a little bit better, right? Let's go to move, and let's just move these around a little bit. So I'm going to do Control Shift and click, and let's just move these aside, and again Control Shift and click to select each one, and let's just rearrange them a little bit, right? Maybe I want to have this somewhere here. This could be like here, and let's just do maybe a little bit better job laying these out. Let's do Control and drag to get rid of the masking, and we can always do auto groups, and that's going to assign a different group automatically for us, which means if we click Control Shift and click on each one, it's going to easily allow us to move it, rotate it, do whatever you want with it. You can make it larger, smaller, and just lay out your UVs in some kind of a cohesive manner, right? Something that makes sense. So I think something like this is great. All right, so I think this is a little bit better. Let's go ahead and do unflatten. All right, as our next step, let's go ahead and export this out to Substance Painter so we can add some beautiful textures to this. So to do this, I'm going to go to export, and let's just export this out as an FBX file. Let's jump into Substance Painter, and in here I'm going to say File, New. Let's switch this to 2K, and I'm going to say Select. Let's find our FBX file and say Open. All right, you can see what that looks like, and it's nice because now the model came nice and smooth. Let's go ahead and bake it. So next I'm going to say Bake Mesh. I'm going to switch this to 2K. I'm going to say use Lowpoly because we don't really have a high one yet. We're going to add all the details here in Substance Painter, and let's just say anti-aliasing I can do 4x. So let's just do a bake. Alright, so once it finishes, you should see something similar to what I'm seeing here. If you wanted to change your lights, you can always go to in here, and let's switch it to maybe glazed. I like that a little bit better. Let's decide on the coloring of this. So I'm going to delete this layer. Let's create a new layer. And in here, I'm going to set this initial color to black. And I'm just going to keep it kind of a bluish black. Something like that is perfect. I'm going to turn off my roughness. And this is going to be the base color for maybe the inside of the hoodie and the head. As well as the shoes too. I think the shoes could be black too. Let's decide on the color of the actual cape. So I'm going to add another layer. And let's just do something maybe kind of like an electric blue. Something like that I think is nice. I'm going to turn off the roughness for this as well. Let's add a black mask. Go into the polygon fill, and in here I'm going to click on UV fill, and let's just simply select the parts of the mesh that we would like to be blue. Maybe the outside as well. Alright, the inner part I think could be the same blue but maybe a little bit darker. So to do this I'm going to simply duplicate, and let's go ahead and do clear mask. Grab our fill. Let's maybe change this to a darker blue. Let's go to the mask, and now if we just simply select the inner pieces, we can actually turn it to maybe a darker blue, just to create some kind of a variation. I'll do the same for the bottom as well. Let's take a look. All right, next let's add some more details. So next it would be cool if this cloth or this cloak had some seams, right? So to do this, I'm gonna add a layer. I'm gonna jump into something called Paint Along the Path. Let's use this tool here. And let's take a look and see how this works actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start clicking on the material, and you can see that it's going to start creating a path with these dots, right? And I can move these dots around and we can control these, right? So one of the things that I would like to do if I want to create a seam, I don't need it to have a color. So all I need is just the normal map and the height. I'm going to hover over the normal and then hold on the Alt and then click to deselect everything else. And again, I just want the height and the normal map. For the height, we can decide if we want the seam to go outwards or inwards. Obviously, inwards is what I want, so I'm going to do something like this. We can also control the brush size, right? The seam should be, somewhat thin, right? We can also control the actual alpha. If we jump into the brush, we have the basic hard or the soft. So if we double click on the hard brush, you can see what that looks like, and maybe that could make a little more sense as far as the seam goes, right? So I think I'm going to go with this, right? So let's go ahead and delete this and start over. I'm going to create yet another layer, and now I'm going to start laying down the seam. So let's just go from this point. And by the way, if I wanted to see the wireframe on this, is there a way in Substance Painter to turn on the wireframe so I can follow along the edge? And there is. To do this, what you need to do is you can jump into display settings, and then on the bottom here you have something called mesh wireframe. If I turn that on, and I can also control the colors, right? Maybe I want it black. And what I could do is the wireframe opacity will let you, turn it all the way up. In my case, I just want just a little hint of knowing where the lines are, so I'm just going to make it something really light like 17. And now what I could do is, using this path tool, I can align my points right along the path and start creating a seam going down the middle. So something like that. Again, I can zoom in and then I can adjust these dots if I wanted to. I can move them around at any point. And I don't really need it to be perfectly straight because I want to keep it, you know, somewhat organic looking, right? It just has to make sense. So let's do this and let's just continue going down the middle. My seam is going to go all the way down here. And I can also carry over. Let's just drag this dot down here and let's just start creating the seam on the middle of the jacket as well. So I'll go all the way to the bottom. And that's just a preference, right? It just depends on what you like or how you want your material to look. If you are having issues like I am right here, I need to add another dot. So I can add another dot and then of course I can put it into position. I want to make sure that I have enough dots to kind of curve, right? Curve along the path. And I think that's pretty good. Let's make sure everything looks good. Once you're done and you want to preview this, just simply press enter. And if I wanted to get rid of this white line so I can preview it, I can just select another layer and we could see what the actual seam looks like, right? At any point we can adjust it. We can just select the line once again and we can change the size of the line. Maybe I want it smaller or larger. So this is completely non-destructive. At any point you can go in, you can adjust the dots, you can adjust the depth. Maybe you want it deeper or less, you know, less deep, whatever you want. So all of these options are still available, and that's an awesome thing about using it this way, right? Using the path tool. So that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and decide if we want the seam somewhere else. I think this is enough, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press enter, and I can actually call this seam layer. That's fine. All right, next let's add some additional details by just dragging one of the existing materials. Obviously, you guys know Substance Painter has thousands of existing materials. I'm just going to try this one right here. It has, it's called Asanoa. I think it has folds built in as well. So I'm just going to literally just drag it onto my character and let it go. And you can see what that looks like. One of the things that I would like to do is I'm going to adjust the tiling. And I don't want this to be part of everything, right? I just want it to be part of my cloak. I kind of like this design. I think it looks perfect for like a mystical character. So I'm going to actually switch this to overlay, and I'm going to go ahead and create a black mask. I'm going to grab this tool here called Polygon Fill, and let's switch it to Mesh Fill, and I'm just going to select my cloak. And let me also select the hoodie. And I think that's kind of cool. We can also, you can still see our seam, which is kind of cool. We can of course adjust the strength of this, you know, if we don't want it to be super strong. But I'm actually kind of liking what I'm seeing here. Maybe I can dial it to like 70. I think that's pretty cool. If you wanted to tweak any of this, you can always select the material that you add, obviously, and you have all these different options. You have different, for example, I can, instead of the UV projection, I can switch this to maybe something like the triplanar projection, and you can see it's going to have a completely different effect as far as the folds go or how it behaves. I think I'm pretty happy with my UV projection. That's fine. And of course I can change the rotation if I wanted to. I can control different aspects of this. I can, for example, maybe just use the color if I just wanted the color. Or, you know, I kind of like the folds. I think that totally works in this situation. If you wanted to adjust the folds strength, for example, we can always go to the height, and in here we can control the actual strength of the folds. Maybe 100 is a little too much. Let's just do something like I'll just do like something like 60. I think maybe that's a little bit better. Holding a shift and right click, I can change the light, and I can figure out how it's looking at different lights. Let's go ahead and add maybe a little gold trim, and also I think this character needs some eyes, right? So for the gold trim, Let's just go to Smart Materials in here, and let's see if there's a gold that works. I think this gold armor is perfect. I'm going to drag it onto my character, and I'm going to switch this back to base color. Let's right click and do a black mask. Let's go back to our polygon fill. Let's just grab this polygon fill. Let's go ahead and turn on our symmetry, and let's just simply select the edges, and that's going to give us a nice effect for the sleeves, maybe something like that. I think that works. We can also, of course, add some trim to the bottom here as well. Just have it go all the way around. I think that's pretty cute. We can decide if we want it to be thicker. Maybe it needs to be a little thicker. All right, I think I kind of like this. I'm done looking at the wireframe. I probably don't need it anymore. Let's just turn that off. Going to display, and let's go ahead and turn off show wireframe. That's fine. And I think the last detail that I would love is some eyes. Let's add some eyes. So to do this, I'm gonna actually add another layer. I'm gonna switch it to color, and let's turn this. The eyes could probably be. Let's try white at first, and maybe we can change it to blue. I'm going to make it black, add a black mask, I mean. All right, I'm going to go to paint, and I'm going to make sure I have hard brush selected, and let's just make it somewhat large. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create some eyes. So to do this, I'm just going to figure out where I want the eye to be. Maybe somewhere right here. I'm going to flip my mask and then do one more going like this. And I think that's pretty cool for eyes. Of course, you can do whatever you want. If you wanted to at this point, you can change the color. And maybe you want blue eyes or red eyes. Maybe it's a mean character. Or in my case, I'm just going to leave it white. If you wanted to turn these into a glowing eyes, for example, let's say this was in the game and you would like these eyes to glow. How would we do that? To do this, what you would want to do is you would want to add another channel. So for example, let's add an emissive channel. And now what we could do is we can create another layer. We can turn the emission on that layer, and let's just make it white. Let's go ahead and add a black mask. And then let's copy this mask over to this mask. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to say copy mask. Go to my emission, right click and say paste into mask. Now what I could do is I can go into my display settings, and let's come up all the way on top, and let's go ahead and actually let's turn on our shadows. Just make it kind of low, maybe like 20 is fine. Another thing I would like to do is I want to come down to active post effects. Let's turn that on, and let's turn on something called glare. So I'm going to turn that on. Let's change the shape to bloom. All right, and then let's go ahead and go into the shader settings, and in here, well, let's turn on the emissive intensity, and that's going to give us a good preview of what the glowing eyes would look like in the game engine. So you can increase the intensity here, and then if you go back into the display settings, in here you can actually control this as well, right? You can make it stronger, or you have all these different options, which is really cool. And there you have it. So if you wanted if the eyes begin to look somewhat jaggedy, that's because of the resolution of the texture. So what does that mean? If you go in and look at your texture, you can see that the eyes are currently on this face right here, and this face is way too small to hold the resolution for nice looking eyes. Even though this is a 2K map, right? We don't have enough resolution for the eyes to look smooth. So how do we fix this? Now we have all this extra space, and maybe we can make the face a little bit larger. So let me show you how you can adjust that. To do this, you need to jump back into ZBrush. All right, and in ZBrush, let's go ahead and flatten our UVs, right? And now if we find our face, if you remember which one it is. All right, so I think it's this one right here. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and do Control Shift. And what I wanna do is I wanna scale this up, right? So the larger I make this, the nicer my eyes will look. All right, so I have all this extra space. Let me move it over here, and let's just make this a little bit larger. Let's just do something like that, and we can figure out where we can add this. Let's put this here so that you can see it's literally 4 times larger in size, which means if we unflatten this, and let's go ahead and export this back out as our FBX file. I'm just going to replace the other one. So now if we jump back into Substance Painter, in here we can go to Edit, Project Configuration. Let's go ahead and select our FBX file and just say Open. And in here I'm going to make sure it says Preserve Strokes Positions on the Mesh, and I'm going to say OK. And you can see right away the eyes got much better, right? The resolution was fixed, and it looks nicer here as well. So the reason I'm leaving this in the video is because I want to show you the pipeline that you can use to go between ZBrush and Substance Painter and continuously make tweaks and adjustments as you need to as you're previewing your mesh, right? So that's super important. Let's go ahead and go back into the 3D view, and now we have something like this. Let's turn off our symmetry and let's take a look at our character. All right, another thing you can do if you wanted to, you can always jump into the iRay and preview your character as a rendered character. Before you do that, make sure you save your work. And let's jump into iRay. If I didn't want to see this background, can I remove the background? You could just go into your display settings, and in here, let's just do clear color. Let's decide what color we like. We can keep it dark. So you can choose any color you like. Another thing you can do, obviously, is you can change your environment map. Every map is going to give you a much different effect. I can choose this cave one. You can see now I have like a little bit greenish in my character. I can also go into maybe something like this Studio 80s. You can see what that looks like. My character is kind of floating a little bit. I can also adjust the Y position of my floor. Of course, I can adjust the environment rotation as well, which is going to dramatically change how the character looks. All right, so have fun playing around. I hope you learned a lot of cool tricks, and I'll see you guys in our next video.